let's get cracking. So I'm aware that there's quite a few of you on the call that aren't in the Chamber Massive, aren't in the Chamber crew. So I'm just going to give you a really quick rundown on who Chamber are and what we do. So we are a membership organisation. We've got around 500 corporate members, which means we represent about 10,000 employees in Guernsey. Our three main pillars of activity is we're here to connect the business community, so events such as these. We're here to promote the business community in Guernsey, so promoting you to the other members within the industry, and also here to support. We do a lot of political lobbying on issues that are important to the business community. So we have been doing some in this space, trying to help speed up some of the practical aspects of importing via St Malo. And we're putting on events such as this to help the business community understand the process and make the most of the connection that we have now with the daily ferry routes. I'm just... How noisy is it, my background noise, just so I can understand, because I've got a gym class going on downstairs. Is it unbearable for everyone, or is it not too bad? Any bad feedback? Okay, fine, cool. Just slightly nervous because I can hear the clock going off. At the Chamber of Commerce, we're a teeny tiny team. I'm the exec director, and then I'm supported by Rachel Cumberland-Dodd, who manages our communications and engagement, and James Hunt, who's our operations and events manager. We've got a really great board with a huge, broad skill set to help support us deliver on events. David Almels is probably the most relevant person to point out for this topic. He's always promoting and pushing for more cultural diplomacy and working together with our neighbours across the water. Right. I am now going to hand over to your expert panel. We've got Chris Morris, Emma Webb and Jamie Edwards, if you want to all introduce yourselves. And then Emma's going to be leading the session today.
I can go first. Can you hear me okay, Alice?
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Chris Morris. I lead on international trade relations and work for the Committee for Economic Development alongside our committee members, particularly in this space, Deputy Rona Humphreys and Deputy Sasha Kazan-Saber-Miller. And our role is to support and encourage economic growth, and particularly in relation to trading with St Malo. And I work very closely with our colleagues at Customs and Excise, which I'll hand over to you.
Thanks, Chris. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Emma Webb. I head up the Customs and Excise division of the Guernsey Customs and Immigration Service. Customs and Excise are the team that deal with all of the unaccompanied goods that are being imported into the island.
Good afternoon. I'm Jamie Edwards. I've worked in Customs and Excise for a number of years, working with Emma at the moment, and was working in Customs and Excise during the transition from or as a consequence of Brexit.
And thank you to all of you for making the time today. I appreciate you're all really busy, but hopefully we'll get lots out of this from everybody on the call today. Right, over to you, Emma.
Thank you. If we could have the first slide. So today we're going to be talking about importing goods from outside the Customs Union. And what I thought we'd do first is just outline what we intend to cover today and what we will not be covering. So this webinar will focus on the import requirements for goods arriving in Guernsey from the point that they reach our border. If you import goods into the bailiwick, then you may need to complete customs formalities and procedures. Customs clearance can be complex, but understanding the key elements of the process will help you to prepare to import goods into the bailiwick. So what we're going to outline today is what our customs union is and how this affects the status of goods imported and what this means in terms of customs requirements and potential import duties. We will also cover when a customs import declaration is needed and how this must be submitted. The information that will be needed on the customs declaration and specifically the commodity codes. The UK tariff that is applied to goods imported into the bailiwick and a basic look at how to classify goods. The potential tariff agreements, preferential tariff agreements, why these exist and what is needed to benefit from reduced rates of import duty. Customs agents in Guernsey and how they might be able to help you. And finally, where further information can be found and what resources are available. So the next slide, please. Just to clarify what we won't be covering today. So we're not going to advise on the customs export requirements imposed by other jurisdictions. Export declarations and associated documentation may be necessary to export goods out of the EU, but you should engage with those who supply and deliver your goods to discuss what information or processes might be required to complete these customs procedures. It may be beneficial to agree specific international commercial terms, which are known as Incoterms. These terms determine who is responsible for things like shipping, customs clearance, and duties or taxes, and these terms must be set out between you and your seller. We'll also not be talking about the commercial imports of food, animals, or animal products. All food imported from anywhere other than the UK, Guernsey, or the Isle of Man is subject to a number of checks. These goods often require pre-notification to the Guernsey Environmental Health and Pollution Regulation Department, who are the best placed to advise on these requirements. So if we move on to the next slide. And we're going to talk about the Customs Union and trade with jurisdictions outside the Customs Union. So as you're aware, prior to Brexit, under an arrangement known as Protocol 3, the bailiwick was within the customs territory of the EU. So broadly speaking, this meant that no customs duties were applied to goods when they were imported from the EU, but a common customs tariff was applied to goods imported from places outside of the EU. So this resulted in the free flow of goods between the EU and Guernsey, and full electric customs declarations were not normally required to import goods from the EU. Brexit ended this relationship, and now all goods imported from the EU are subject to customs formalities. So following Brexit, in order to preserve the free flow of goods with the UK, the bailiwick entered into a customs union arrangement with the UK, Guernsey, and the Isle of Man. So this arrangement took place on the 1st of January 2021 and allows the tariff-free movement of goods between the four territories. So being in a customs union with the UK also enables us to seek inclusion in free trade arrangements that the UK independently negotiate with other international partners when it is in our interest to do so. The customs arrangement, however, requires us to keep certain customs laws aligned with the UK, and we must legislate to maintain that correspondence wherever necessary. Subject to any variations which may be agreed, we must also adopt relevant practices and procedures which align with the UK, and we must apply the UK customs tariff to any trade with territories not included in the customs union, and we are not able to independently change or disapply the tariff. So this means that if you import goods from places outside our customs union, including from the EU, you are required to complete additional customs formalities. This essentially means having to submit a customs declaration, provide relevant supporting documentation, and pay the relevant import duties. It is important to note, however, that the bailiwick remains fiscally independent, so the customs union arrangement does not include matters relating to excise duty, VAT, or GST. So hopefully that's given you a picture of the customs union and why we're in this position. And I'm now going to hand over to Jamie, who will talk you through the declaration requirements, tariffs and commodity codes, and explain what's needed to benefit from preferential rates of duty for EU originating goods. Jamie.
Thanks, Emma, and good afternoon to you all again. I'm going to start by talking about customs import declarations. In general, if you import goods over the value of £135 from any place outside the customs union, then a full electronic customs declaration is going to need to be submitted. Depending on the classification of your goods, customs duty may also apply, but this is subject to preferential rates and arrangements, which we'll look at in a little bit more detail later. You can make the declaration yourself, or you can ask someone to do it for you. We generally refer to these people as customs agents. Could I have the next slide, please? If you decide not to use an agent, then you will need to make and submit the declarations yourself. To do this, you will need to get access to our customs system known as GEMS, and GEMS is an abbreviation for the Guernsey Electronic Manifest System. This is a bespoke system which handles all of the import and export freight manifests which are submitted to Guernsey Customs, and it also provides a portal in order for people to submit declarations and documentation directly to us. Guidance on the process for making a declaration and for creating a GEMS account can be found on our website. Declarations are submitted via data fields that require specific information about each item that has been imported, and for each consignment that you've imported, you'll need to provide information regarding the supplier, the total value, and the consignee, to name a few. A specific line of data for each type of good in that consignment will also be required, and each line must contain a description and a value along with a commodity code, and we'll discuss commodity codes in a bit more detail later as well. When a freight consignment arrives in the bailiwick, which requires the submission of an import declaration, the carrier will be told by customs to hold the goods until the declaration has been submitted and applicable customs duties have been paid. When we tell the carrier to hold a shipment, we generally refer to this as goods being detained by customs. The carrier should advise you that your goods are detained, and they should also provide you with a necessary reference number to submit an import declaration. But if you've got an account on GEMS, you'll be able to see the detained consignments in your list of items that require customs clearance, and this is normally available as soon as the consignment has been manifested to us and GEMS has matched it to your account. It's also worth noting that you can make these import declarations up to 7 days in advance of the goods arriving here. Once you know that the goods are on the way, you can submit a pre-arrival declaration, and you can also pay the relevant duties if there's any due. The submitted declaration will then be assigned to the goods once the goods have been imported. By submitting these declarations in advance, it's most likely that it will result in quicker customs clearance because the goods aren't held up whilst that process is being undertaken. By doing so, it enables those customs formalities to be done whilst the goods are on the way to you, rather than waiting for them to be done whilst the goods are here and being held in the detained facilities. If duty is liable, this can also be paid directly from your customs declaration through GEMS. And if you regularly import goods that are liable to customs duty, then you may benefit of having what we call a duty deferment account on GEMS. And this enables your duty charges to be deferred and paid once a month through a direct debit collection, instead of you having to pay for each individual consignment when it arrives. To set up a duty deferment account, you'll need to demonstrate a business need for it, and you'll need to also be authorised by us. You'll also have to provide a financial guarantee to cover any potentially unpaid duties. But if you think a duty deferment account might be right for your level of imports, then you should contact Customs and Excise and we can give you a bit more information about that. And finally, on declarations, it's just worth knowing that there's a test version of GEMS available online, and you can use this test version to make declarations in a safe environment to ensure you understand the declaration process ahead of submitting live information to Customs. Could I have the next slide, please? We'll now talk about the tariffs and the commodity codes that are required on import declarations. Emma mentioned earlier that Guernsey is obliged to apply the UK tariff to goods imported from anywhere other than the UK, Jersey or Isle of Man. The tariff payable will be established by using a commodity code, the value and the origin of the goods that are declared by the importer onto the import declaration. And you must work out the value of the goods, which then will be used in your declaration. Most of the time, it's going to be the price that you've paid for the goods, and this must also include things like shipping charges to get the goods to the first border within the customs union. There are instances where there might not be a transaction value for the goods at the time of importation, and if that's the case, then there's alternative valuation methods that can be used. But I think we see the majority of the time it's the price that's being paid, the transaction value of those goods. And the customs value is really important because the amount of duty that might need to be paid is often worked out as a percentage of that value of the goods, and the value must represent a true value, and any supporting documentation might be requested from us if there's any doubts over the values that have been declared to us. Could I have the next slide, please? So just a bit more about commodity codes. Then they are codes which are internationally recognized reference numbers, and the code describes a specific product, and a code is going to be needed for each different product that you import when making a declaration. If the goods are classified correctly from the outset, you'll then know the rate of import duty that you'll be expected to pay, and they'll also be used to determine if there's any preferential rates, which most of the time would then be 0%. If you're making the declaration yourself, then you're going to need to classify the goods prior to submitting the declaration. And to do this, you'll need to use the UK's trade tariff. There's a step-by-step guide for navigating the tariff, and that's available on our website. But if you're unable to find the right commodity code, which can often be quite tricky, then you can ask HM Revenue and Customs for some help. The inquiries to HMRC can be made directly to their tariff classification team through the non-legally binding email service. They aim to respond to those requests within 5 working days. HMRC also offer what we call an advanced tariff ruling, which allows you to obtain a legally binding decision on a commodity code to use when you're importing your goods. These decisions are binding on all customs authorities throughout the customs union and are often quite helpful if you want absolute certainty on the rate that you're going to need to pay. It is worth noting, though, that these decisions must be obtained before the goods are imported, and applications to HMRC for these types of decisions can take between 1 and 4 months to process. Could I have the next slide, please? So the UK has a trade agreement with the EU along with a number of other countries, but specifically on the EU, if you import goods from there, you might be able to claim a preferential rate of duty when making your declaration onto gems, and that's the time when you'd claim that preferential rate when you make the declaration on gems. In most cases, it will mean that they'll be free of import duty. And it's really important to note that the claim for the preferential rate of duty must be when the product originates in the EU. We often see quite a lot of confusion around goods just because they've been sent from the EU. There's an expectation that they will be of EU preferential origin, but they've got to actually originate from the EU. And to originate from the EU, the goods must have been either wholly obtained there, or if they haven't been wholly obtained, then they must have gone through a sufficient EU process carried out on those goods in order to qualify for preferential origin. For example, if goods are made in China but imported from an EU supplier without any further processing, then they wouldn't be eligible for EU preferential origin just because they've been dispatched from that EU country. However, if Chinese goods were sufficiently processed in the EU to create a new product, for example, then they might be eligible for preferential rates. And these rules are set out in the relevant agreements. And wholly obtained refers to goods that are made entirely or manufactured in the specific country without incorporating any other materials from any other country. Where the total value of all the goods that you've imported is over £1,000, you can only claim preference if you can prove the preferential origin. And in most cases, this is going to be through what we call a statement on origin of the product, which is going to be required to be submitted to customs at the time you make the declaration. And this statement must be made out by the exporter. So in this case, it's their responsibility to ensure that the goods they are supplying you meet the relevant rules of origin. And this statement on origin must be provided on an invoice or some other form of commercial documentation. And that documentation must be sufficient to describe the product in detail so that it can be easily identified. And there's specific text that's got to be used on those documents too for the statement on origin, and that's set out in the rules of origin requirements under the UK's deal with the EU. Could I have the next slide, please? So just finishing off on preferential rates, if the goods don't meet the rules of origin or they're over the certain threshold and it can't be proved that they meet them, then the relevant customs duty will need to be paid. But further information on claiming preferential rates of duty covered under UK trade deals, including the one with the EU, can be found on our website. Could I have the next slide, please? So just a little bit about customs agents. as we mentioned earlier, you can either submit the declaration yourself, or you can ask a customs agent to submit it on your behalf. There's no mandatory requirement for anyone to use a customs agent, but they can find the information that's needed to complete and submit a declaration, and they're often familiar with customs procedures. What they can do for you and who will be liable depends on the services that they provide, ultimately what you want them to do, and any commercial arrangements that you have with them. We do have a list of Guernsey-based businesses that have told us that they may be able to make customs declarations on people's behalf, and those importers are published on our website. I'll hand back to Emma now just to summarise what we've said today and to show you where a bit more further information can be found.
Thank you, Jamie. That's a really useful, a lot of information to take in there. So that's the end of our presentation. But in summary, there are some key points for you to consider when importing goods from outside the customs union. So these are, you need to decide on how you wish to make and submit your declarations. So if you decide to use an agent, you should engage with them early to establish what information they will require to make the declarations on your behalf. If you choose to make and submit declarations, you should create a GEMS account. You should get familiar with the declaration process. As Jamie mentioned before, you can use the test version of GEMS to make declarations in a safe environment and review the guidance available. Consider submitting pre-arrival declarations. So submitting declarations in advance will most likely enable your goods to be cleared through customs more quickly. You also need to find the right commodity codes. So a commodity code will be required for each different product that you import. You should familiarise yourself with the UK tariff and the advice on classifying goods, and you can ask HMRC if you can't find the codes yourself. Also consider applying for a duty deferment account. So if you're regularly importing goods that are liable to import duties, then you may benefit from having a duty deferment account, and this enables your duty charges to be deferred and to be paid once a month through direct debit. And also engage with your supply chains. So you should engage with those who supply and deliver your goods to discuss what information or processes might be required to complete customs procedures, both here and at departure ports. Agreeing Incoterms can help establish individual responsibilities. Can move on to the next slide, please. So we have a lot of guidance published online, which covers all the matters that we've talked about today. There is a specific document which outlines the basics of customs import processes and provides information to support you if you're involved in these processes. The Chamber also has this on their website. There is also a comprehensive business area on our website covering various other related topics. So you'll see from the slide some of the topics covered, and I would encourage you to take the time to read all the information that is available to you. And the next slide, please. So finally, thank you for attending this webinar today. We hope that the information we provided was helpful, and we are happy to take any questions that you may have.
Just going to step in. Chris, is there anything that you want to add at this point before we take some questions? Or
I'm really grateful to Jamie and Emma. I think from a Committee for Economic Development perspective, we're very keen to encourage trade with, in particular with France, and myself and Caroline, who's on the Teams chat here, stand ready to support any business and engage with like-minded businesses in France in particular for you. So what we wanted to do today is, and I hope it's achieved that, is for Guernsey Customs to kind of break down the worry that there might be and concern from Guernsey businesses around the customs elements, because that's something that we hear on a regular basis. It's a complex issue in relation to customs, and clearly here it isn't as complex as you might imagine, and we don't want the thought that the customs issues are a barrier to trade. In fact, that they're not. So I think hopefully today has been really helpful. As I said, we from Committee for Economic Development, we stand ready to help and support businesses, and it would be great for you to get in contact with myself or Caroline Spink. We'd be delighted to work with you and support with you and encourage and link you up with businesses in France to be able to encourage bilateral trade, particularly in St Malo and the Brittany region, and of course across wider France and the EU. And don't be fearsome of the customs arrangements. We can point you in the right direction. And of course, the guidance that Jamie and Emma have published here is here to help, which is essentially what we're trying to do.
Yeah, absolutely, and the same goes for chamber. If you don't know where to start, and if you don't know if you need to speak to customs, we're happy to come to us, and we will point you in the right direction. So we have got a couple of questions. The first one I think is actually for you, Chris. So it's about post-Brexit EU export tariffs for smaller freight items. For example, wine means that it's often cheaper to get a ferry over to St Malo with a van and pick up the freight rather than trying to send it unaccompanied. Have we explored getting a shared warehouse for regular importers so they can hold goods to be collected?
Now this is a really interesting one. So there is a customs agent, and I know that Jamie talked about the choice as to whether you do, as a business, you decide to import directly yourself and deal with the logistics yourself, or whether you use an agent, customs agent, to do that. Now there are customs agents and handling agents and couriers in St Malo that will help support that. Alternatively, you can look at consolidating your own freight. In fact, St Malo has, in fairness, has an abundance of warehousing space, and it is something that we would be pleased to explore with you if you wanted some support in looking at that, and if you were prepared to deal with the freight yourself. In the past, we have had unaccompanied freight that's come through from St Malo. The van's been emptied and then the van goes back to St Malo. It's quite a complex logistics chain in achieving that, but not impossible. In fact, when it was operating some months ago, it was for live shellfish back and forth. So it worked kind of very effectively, certainly on the fast ferries. So definitely happy to explore that. Feel free. I'll put my email and Caroline's email in the chat. Please pick up the phone and we'll sit down and have a conversation with you about that. And we can also link you up with like-minded individuals and businesses in St Malo. And if we don't know, Caroline and I have a good relationship with the region of the regional authorities in St Malo, the Chamber of Commerce in St Malo, and Eddie's, who are the commercial operators in St Malo, all of which are very, very keen to support economic growth in terms of supporting the ferry services and supporting bilateral trade between ourselves and France. So we can pick that up, and we will do that with you in a confidential space as well. So happy to link you up and support through those kind of considerations.
Thanks, Chris. John's placed a comment, but it's not really relevant to importing and exporting and the process of it. So John, we'll follow that one up on email with you on tariffs and where that sits. Has anybody else got any questions? Or we might be giving you all half an hour back of your day. Oh, hang on, we've got one come in. Right, so it starts with, this might be a complicated question, but we'll give it a go. To answer with any necessity in the forum, there are a few situations where you've had to buy it from the UK arm of an EU company when they have a centralised warehouse in an EU country. But due to the nature of the company, they have factories all over the EU and world. So some of the items trigger third country duty, which is fine. However, due to procedures in the UK, companies use the UK and end customers like ourselves don't pay import tax. This is done by the UK arm. Is that a double tax issue? Or do we want to pick that one up separately?
I think I kind of understand the question, but happy to pick it up offline. I think what you're saying is if you import your goods that come from the EU that may have been manufactured outside of the EU and they come through the UK border first, and therefore a tariff is applied to those goods as they enter the UK, are they then getting import duty applied when they come into Guernsey?
That's how I read it.
If that is the case, no. So everything, and I'll look to Jamie and Emma for their confirmation on this one. If it's cleared as an international good coming through the UK border and is cleared as such, and tax duty is applied on that good, then when it moves into Guernsey, then it's not, then a duty won't be applied to that good. I'll just look at Jamie and Emma just for their nods and thumbs up on that one.
Yeah, no, thanks for clarifying that, Chris. That's absolutely right. Once goods have been imported into the customs union and import duties have been paid, whether that be at the full rate or whether there's a preferential agreement in place to allow that in for zero tariff, once those goods are entered, what we call them is they've been entered for free circulation within our customs union, and it means that the import tariffs are not payable again. They can move freely within the customs union without the import tariffs being applied again. But we are outside of the UK's fiscal arrangements, so it means that excise duties and any internal taxes such as VAT and potentially GST would become liable when they're imported from within the customs territory. So hopefully that clarifies that.
And again, if I can just say, if you've got any further questions on that one, do reach out. My email's in the chat, and again, happy to have a conversation about how we can work with you and offer a little bit of advice if you think that there's something wrong in terms of your import track on those goods as well.
I'll also put your contact details, Chris, in the follow-up email. Don't worry, people will be able to get hold of you.
No, that's great. That's what we want.
I've got another question, which I think is for the customs team. Can you explain EORI numbers, please?
Yep, I can probably briefly explain that. So they are reference numbers which are provided by HM Revenue and Customs, which are identifier numbers for particular businesses. Generally speaking, Guernsey Customs don't require EORI numbers. So if businesses are importing and making declarations here, then an EORI number isn't required by us, Guernsey Customs. But if you do transact directly with UK Customs or their systems, you might be asked for a number. If you are exporting goods from the EU, you might be again asked for an EORI number for the purposes of the export declarations from there. And then there are other few circumstances when an EORI number is necessary or needed. For example, if you are placing goods under transit and again directly interacting with the transit system itself, you'd need an EORI number. EORI numbers are really easy to obtain, I understand. There's again keep referring to it, but again, there's guidance on our website on how to apply for one. They're free to apply and they don't take more than a few days. So our advice is generally, if you're being asked for one, you may as well apply for one and get a number registered to your business, because then you've got one for the future if you need it. Hopefully that explains and that clarifies that. But as I keep saying, there's more guidance on EORI numbers on our website, which sets out different circumstances when they might be needed and when they might not be needed.
Thank you, Jamie. I'll include a link to that as well in the follow-up email. And a question here on, is there a quicker way of editing a declaration rather than waiting for customs to revert back to draft? Is that a process question, or is that a learning that we need to help with?
I think that's a process question. We're happy to take that one away and speak to operational colleagues who handle the system on a regular basis and see if there's anything. So it sounds like that's a specific issue which we can perhaps address outside of this.
Yeah, super. Thank you.
And I can answer Deputy Gollop's question in terms of our the recovery of any customs tariffs. They come to directly to the states of Guernsey, where duties are applied and collected on behalf of the states of Guernsey by Guernsey Customs.
Thanks, Chris. Right, I am going to declare. Oh, no. One question. Two questions will come in. Hang on, everyone. You're not going to go yet. Right. So for hotels importing goods from Europe, in which case is a certificate of origin mandatory? So can you explain when you would need a certificate of origin? Is that if that's a quick answer?
I mean, a certificate of origin is as it says, it's a statement that's saying the origin of the goods. It depends on the trade agreement that's being relied upon as to what documentation will be required. Generally speaking, with the EU, it's referred to as a statement on origin, and that's, as we explained before, it's a commercial documentation with specific wording on it, which the exporter is saying and declaring that the goods that they are supplying are of EU origin. Certificate of origin is something very similar, and a certificate of origin could be used in other cases or other preferential agreements. So hopefully that answers the question, but
so
if
they're
not,
two
then
different documents for different reasons.
a certificate of origin is more of a formal certificate document, whereas a statement on origin would be a statement made on a commercial documentation.
Okay, thank you. And I think someone here is trying to speed up the process of doing their customs declarations. Can you copy and paste declarations if it's the same products, or do you have to re-enter each time?
Again, that's more of an operational question. I think that we do have a facility where you can upload information directly from a CSV spreadsheet into a declaration. So if that information is similar on numerous occasions, you can use that CSV to upload. But I think that would be something that we would need to provide further information outside of this one.
Super, thank you. We can take that one away. Okay, I am going to declare now. I am going to declare. That's your chance, everybody, but not till the end of time. Obviously, we will share contact details for everybody if you've got any more follow-up questions. They were really good questions, and thank you so much, Emma, Chris, Jamie. It was really, really useful. I hope everyone has got what they needed out of this, and they are going to be busy filling up the ships coming from St Malo from the spring. Thank you very much for your time, everyone. And if there are any follow-up sessions that you would like, please do let us know and we will see what we can do. Speak to you all soon.
Thank you.
Thanks
Goodbye.
so much. Bye.
Thank you.